The man who controls his emotions doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't react impulsively. His calmness becomes magnetic, his strength silent but undeniable. Women are drawn to stability, confidence, and restraint. Emotional mastery creates respect, desire, and loyalty. He wins her heart not by force, but by being unshakable. There is a power in silence that most men never understand. It's not the loudest voice in the room that commands attention. It's the calm presence that doesn't need to prove itself. When a man controls his emotions, he stops reacting to every little thing that life throws at him. He doesn't get angry at minor annoyances. He doesn't panic at sudden setbacks. And he doesn't allow frustration to dictate his actions. There's a rare confidence in this restraint, a quiet assurance that comes from knowing himself better than anyone else. Impulse is the enemy of attraction. A man who reacts immediately, who lets anger, fear, or desperation take over, reveals a lack of control. And control, or the lack of it, is something women feel instinctively. She can sense when a man's emotions are driving him like a storm-driven boat versus when he navigates with purpose and calm. Emotional mastery doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means feeling without being enslaved by them. It means acknowledging anger, but choosing patience, feeling disappointment, but choosing perspective, sensing desire, but not demanding fulfillment. A man who masters his impulses becomes magnetic because he doesn't behave predictably. In a world of reactive men, she notices the one who doesn't shout, who doesn't chase, who doesn't crumble. She sees him responding rather than reacting, deciding rather than losing control, and it creates a deep sense of security and admiration. There is an allure in knowing that no matter what chaos surrounds him, he will remain grounded. She begins to see him as someone rare, someone who is not shaped by circumstances, but shapes them instead. This mastery also builds respect. Every time a man refrains from reacting impulsively, every time he chooses restraint over drama, he sends a silent message. I am in charge of myself. And respect, more than desire or flattery, is what creates lasting attraction. Women are drawn to strength that is quiet, to confidence that is steady, to men who do not need to prove themselves through anger or urgency. Emotional restraint is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength because it requires more courage to pause, reflect, and choose than to explode immediately. There's also a subtle elegance in patience. A man who controls his impulses doesn't let small provocations or fleeting frustrations determine his behavior. He doesn't argue for the sake of winning. He doesn't react to petty games or attention-seeking behaviors. Instead, he listens, he observes, and he responds with clarity and purpose. And in that clarity, he creates a space where she feels safe, not just physically, but emotionally. She knows that she can share her thoughts, her feelings, even her frustrations, without fear of being met with volatility. That safety, that calmness, is irresistible. Finally, controlling impulses is a form of self-love. It is the awareness that true power lies not in reacting, but in choosing. Each moment of emotional restraint is a moment where a man affirms his own worth, his own vision, and his own stability. And women, whether consciously or unconsciously, recognize that. They are drawn to the man who is anchored, who does not chase every fleeting emotion, who shows that real strength is measured not in force, but in control. Strength is often mistaken for noise. People believe that the man who shouts the loudest, who demands attention, or who proves himself constantly is the one in control. But real strength does not need to announce itself. True power is quiet. It doesn't seek validation from others because it is secure in itself. A man who carries silent strength doesn't have to tell the world who he is. His presence alone commands respect, and women feel it instinctively. There is something magnetic about a man who doesn't need to explain, justify, or perform to be seen. Silent strength is rooted in self-control. It's the ability to remain composed when everyone else is losing their minds. It's the calm in the middle of chaos, the steady hand when everything seems uncertain. Women are drawn to this because it creates a sense of safety and stability. They notice the man who doesn't react to every insult, every provocation, every petty drama. They notice the one who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard, who doesn't need to compete to prove his value. This kind of strength is rare because most people mistake reaction for power, forgetting that restraint requires courage, patience, and clarity of mind. There is also an undeniable allure in the mystery of silent strength. A man who doesn't feel the need to constantly explain himself leaves space for intrigue, admiration, and desire. His confidence doesn't scream, it whispers. His decisions are deliberate. His actions are measured. And women, often unconsciously, pick up on this. They feel the difference between a man who is ruled by emotion and a man who rules himself. The quiet man has a presence that draws attention without effort, a magnetic pull that comes from stability rather than theatrics. Silent strength also communicates resilience. Life will test him, provoke him, challenge him, but he stands firm. He does not crumble under pressure, nor does he allow petty circumstances to define him. This resilience is not loud or boastful. It is quiet, constant, and consistent. And women admire consistency because it signals reliability, loyalty, and the ability to protect not just themselves, but the emotional space around them. She can feel his power without needing it to be displayed because it exists in every gesture, every decision, and every pause. Another aspect of silent strength is emotional intelligence. The man who is strong in silence knows when to speak and when to hold back. He knows that words can inflame or soothe, and he chooses them wisely. He listens more than he talks, he observes more than he reacts, and he acts with precision rather than impulse. This awareness makes him unpredictable in the best way, not in a confusing or manipulative sense, but in a way that demonstrates depth, wisdom, and control. Women are naturally drawn to this depth because it signals maturity, stability, and understanding, qualities that cannot be faked or forced. Silent strength is magnetic because it combines power with calm, confidence with humility, and presence with restraint. It does not need an audience to exist, and yet it draws people toward it effortlessly. Women feel it before they hear a word. They recognize it before it is acknowledged, and they are drawn to it because it represents something rare, something real, something lasting, something unshakable. Confidence is not loud, it is not demanding, and it does not seek validation. True confidence is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It is the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself because it is already known in the way a man carries himself, the way he speaks, the way he makes decisions without hesitation. A man who is confident without arrogance never feels the need to prove his worth to anyone, and women notice this immediately. There is a difference between a man who brags about what he can do and a man who simply does it, and that difference is magnetic. Arrogance is loud. It seeks approval. It demands recognition, and it often covers insecurity. Confidence, on the other hand, comes from a place of inner certainty. A man who truly believes in himself doesn't need to dominate conversations or belittle others to be seen. He can be calm in any situation, assertive when necessary, and humble in his victories. Women are drawn to this because it signals security, not just in himself, but in the relationship he can offer. A man who is confident without arrogance inspires trust, admiration, and respect, creating a deep emotional connection without even trying. This kind of confidence also reflects emotional maturity. He understands that strength is not measured by the reactions he can force from others, but by the composure he maintains in every circumstance. When challenges arise, he faces them with clarity and calm rather than anger or defensiveness. When disagreements occur, he listens and responds thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. This balance between self-assurance and restraint demonstrates that he is grounded, capable, and emotionally intelligent, qualities that women instinctively find attractive. A man who exudes confidence without arrogance also gives others the space to feel valued. He does not overshadow, control, or belittle. Instead, he uplifts and encourages. Women sense this, and it creates a magnetic pull. They want to be near someone who is comfortable in his own skin, someone whose security does not threaten theirs. Confidence without arrogance is not only attractive, it is a signal of partnership, of a man who can stand by a woman without overpowering her, who can lead without dominating, and who can love without suffocating. There is also power in the subtlety of this kind of confidence. It shows in his actions more than his words. It shows in how he remains calm when others panic, in how he handles criticism without defensiveness, in how he accepts mistakes and grows from them. It shows in the way he makes decisions, not to impress, but because he knows what is right. Women notice the difference between a man who seeks external validation and a man whose strength comes from within. The latter is rare, magnetic, and unforgettable. Confidence without arrogance becomes a silent language that women understand instinctively. It is not flashy, it is not dramatic, but it is powerful in a way that resonates deeply. It creates desire, admiration, and respect simultaneously. It is a combination of strength, humility, and authenticity that cannot be faked. And once a woman experiences it, she cannot ignore it. It is the kind of man she remembers, the kind of presence that lingers long after the conversation is over, and the kind of energy that draws her heart without effort or demand. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means indifference, coldness, or a lack of care. But true detachment is far more powerful than that. It is not about walking away from life or avoiding emotions. It is about not letting every moment, every word, or every action control your inner peace. A man who has mastered the power of detachment moves through life with clarity, calmness, and purpose. He experiences love, he experiences desire, but he does not become enslaved by them. He does not chase, plead, or beg. He simply exists with a quiet strength that cannot be shaken. Women notice this instinctively. There is something magnetic about a man who does not cling, who does not react to every emotion or situation with urgency. When she tests him, when she pushes boundaries, when she tries to provoke a reaction, he remains steady. He does not become desperate for approval or affection, and that is precisely what makes him irresistible. Detachment creates an invisible confidence because it shows that his world is not dependent on anyone else's validation. It shows that he is self-sufficient, secure, and in control of his own life. Detachment is also a form of emotional intelligence. It allows a man to love deeply without being consumed, to care without losing himself, and to communicate without the burden of neediness. He can express passion without desperation, he can show desire without pressure, and he can make decisions without being swayed by temporary emotions. This balance creates respect, admiration, and desire. Women feel it, even if they cannot explain it. They feel the difference between a man who reacts impulsively and one who acts with purpose. The latter becomes unforgettable because he represents stability and emotional maturity. The power of detachment also creates contrast. In a world where most men are reactive, needy, or emotionally unstable, The man who does not chase, who does not plead, and who does not overreact stands out. He becomes rare, valuable, and magnetic. She begins to see him not just as a man, but as a presence, a force that is unshakable and undeniable. His restraint is not weakness, it is power. His calmness is not passivity, it is control. And in this control, he creates a space where she feels intrigued, safe, and drawn toward him in ways that words cannot explain. Detachment also allows him to set boundaries without guilt, to walk away without anger, and to love without desperation. He does not cling to attention or demand affection because he knows that true connection comes naturally. She notices this, and it creates a subtle but profound attraction. A man who is detached is not unattached. He is intentionally engaged, choosing where to place his energy, choosing when to respond, and choosing to remain unshaken in the face of uncertainty. The power of detachment transforms a man into someone rare. He is a man who can love fully but wisely, who can care deeply but maintain control, and who can hold space for a woman without being consumed by her. Detachment is the invisible force that draws her in, the quiet strength that makes her heart notice him, and the magnetic presence that leaves a lasting impression long after he is gone. Calmness is a quiet power that many men overlook. The world is chaotic, loud, and impatient, and most people respond to that chaos with noise, anger, or desperation. But there is something magnetic about a man who remains unshaken, who does not react to every provocation, and who moves through life with quiet composure. Women are drawn to this calmness instinctively because it signals strength, stability, and emotional maturity. It is not a performance, it is an inner state, a demonstration that no circumstance can easily disturb him. A man who maintains calmness under pressure creates an aura of security. When life throws challenges, when conflicts arise, or when emotions run high, he does not panic, shout, or crumble. Instead, he observes, he listens, and he responds with precision and clarity. This calmness makes women feel safe. They feel that with him there is no drama, no emotional roller coaster, no unnecessary tension. They feel they can breathe, that they can be themselves, and that their vulnerability will not be met with volatility. This safety is one of the most powerful forms of attraction. Calmness also communicates confidence without arrogance. A man who reacts calmly does not need to prove his worth through aggression or domination. He does not seek validation in the moment because he is secure within himself. Women sense this stability, and it creates admiration and desire. There is a subtle power in being unshakable. It tells her that he is capable of handling life's pressures, that he can support rather than demand, that he is strong enough to lead without forcing control. This is the type of strength that draws women in more than any flashy gesture or dramatic display ever could. When a man is calm, he also becomes more aware. Calmness allows him to notice things others miss, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to make decisions that reflect wisdom rather than emotion. Women are naturally attracted to men who demonstrate awareness because it signals intelligence, maturity, and reliability. They recognize that a man who is calm in challenging situations is someone who can think clearly, act intentionally, and remain consistent, qualities that create long-term respect and desire. Calmness also enhances mystery and depth. In a world where most people are reactive and loud, a man who does not feel compelled to respond immediately stands out. He creates contrast. He becomes rare, intriguing, and compelling. Women feel drawn to him because he is not easily swayed, easily provoked, or easily predicted. His composure makes her curious, makes her admire him, and makes her want to be close to someone who is both strong and gentle, assertive yet serene. Attraction through calmness is about presence. It is about being a man who is emotionally intelligent, grounded, and confident in every moment. It is about showing restraint when others react impulsively, choosing peace over drama, and maintaining clarity when emotions run high. Women feel this power before they even hear a word. They are drawn to it instinctively because it represents something rare, something valuable, and something unforgettable. Calmness is not silence, it is strength. It is the invisible force that captures her attention, earns her respect, and slowly, naturally, draws her heart toward him. Emotions are often misunderstood as weaknesses, as forces that make men vulnerable, unpredictable, or less capable. But the truth is that emotions are not the problem. It is how they are used. A man who understands this transforms emotions into tools, not weapons. He does not allow anger, jealousy, or frustration to dictate his actions. He feels deeply, but he does not react impulsively. He channels his emotions to guide decisions, to build connection, and to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Women sense this difference instinctively, and it makes him magnetic. A man who treats emotions as tools is self-aware. He knows when to express love, when to express concern, and when to step back to process what he feels. He communicates his emotions without attacking, blaming, or manipulating. Anger becomes a signal to set boundaries rather than an excuse for aggression. Frustration becomes motivation rather than a reason to lash out. Desire becomes expression rather than demand. By mastering this, he not only manages his inner world, but also creates an emotional environment that feels safe, respectful, and appealing to the woman in his life. When emotions are weapons, they push people away. They create chaos, confusion, and fear. A man who lashes out in anger, who uses guilt to manipulate, or who allows jealousy to control him, is showing weakness under the guise of strength. Women feel this immediately. They may tolerate it temporarily, but it never inspires genuine respect, trust, or attraction. Conversely, when emotions are tools, they are powerful. They allow a man to respond to challenges thoughtfully, to connect with empathy, and to express passion without desperation. They become instruments that enhance his presence, deepen relationships, and create a magnetic balance of strength and sensitivity. A man who uses emotions wisely also models restraint and intentionality. Every word he speaks, every action he takes is deliberate. He does not let fleeting feelings dictate the course of a conversation or a decision. Instead, he observes, reflects, and responds in a way that preserves dignity and reinforces connection. Women notice this because it demonstrates maturity and reliability. Emotional mastery signals that he is someone who can handle the complexities of life and relationships without chaos. It is a sign of strength that does not need to dominate. It is a presence that quietly commands respect. Emotions as tools also create attraction through contrast. In a world of impulsive reactions, overreactions, and emotional instability, a man who channels his feelings thoughtfully stands out. He becomes rare, magnetic, and compelling. Women are drawn to him because he is unpredictable only in the sense of depth, not in volatility. His emotions become a language that communicates authenticity, intelligence, and control. They feel safe, intrigued, and connected all at the same time. Mastering emotions as tools rather than weapons transforms a man's life. It allows him to express himself fully while maintaining control, to connect deeply without dependency, and to inspire respect and desire without force. Women notice this, they feel it, and it becomes one of the most powerful forces of attraction. Emotional mastery is not about suppression. It is about direction, purpose, and conscious expression. It is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, the reactive from the magnetic, and the temporary from the lasting. In life and in relationships, Contrast is what makes someone stand out. When everything around us is loud, reactive, and impulsive, the man who remains calm, composed, and self-possessed becomes rare and valuable. Women notice contrast instinctively. They notice the difference between a man who chases and a man who walks away, between a man who overreacts and a man who maintains control. In a world full of ordinary behavior, contrast becomes magnetic because it is different, unexpected, and intriguing. Contrast is not about manipulation or acting differently for effect. It is about living authentically, holding standards, and maintaining emotional control when others do not. A man who does not overreact, who does not chase validation, who does not succumb to drama, creates an invisible aura of value. Women feel it without needing to analyze it consciously. They feel his stability, his strength, and his composure. That contrast between the chaotic world around him and his unshakable presence makes him unforgettable. It creates curiosity, admiration, and desire. The world is full of men who give too much too soon, who overexpress emotion, who beg for attention, and who allow themselves to be ruled by impulse. These men are abundant, and their behaviors are expected. A man who understands the power of contrast, however, does the opposite. He moves deliberately. He communicates thoughtfully. He invests selectively. He does not react to every provocation, nor does he allow his worth to be determined by fleeting attention or validation. In doing so, he stands apart naturally, without arrogance or effort. This rarity is the foundation of his value in the eyes of women. Contrast also enhances attraction because it creates a sense of mystery. When a man is not constantly available, when he does not demand approval, when he holds his emotions with dignity, he becomes compelling. Women are drawn to him not because of what he says or does overtly, but because of the energy he radiates. They notice that he is different from every other man they have encountered. His calmness becomes magnetic, his restraint becomes intriguing, and his independence becomes alluring. Contrast is what transforms ordinary behavior into exceptional presence. Furthermore, contrast creates respect. Women are naturally drawn to men who demonstrate emotional mastery, patience, and self-control, especially when those qualities are uncommon in the men around them. When he walks away from drama rather than engaging, when he listens more than he reacts, when he invests in the right moments rather than wasting energy on trivialities, she perceives him as someone rare, someone worth her attention and admiration. Contrast signals that he is not desperate for approval, that he values himself, and that he sets standards, qualities that inspire both desire and respect. Contrast is the invisible force that elevates a man's presence. It is the difference between mediocrity and magnetism, between being ordinary and unforgettable. It is not about being distant or uncaring. It is about being intentional, controlled, and self-possessed. Women notice it instinctively, feel it emotionally, and are drawn to it naturally. In a world of reactive men, the man who creates contrast becomes rare, valuable, and magnetic. And it is this rare quality that makes him irresistible. Loyalty and stability are qualities that cannot be faked, bought, or rushed. They are cultivated through self-awareness, emotional control, and integrity, and they are the foundation of lasting attraction. A man who embodies these traits does not seek short-term validation or fleeting attention. He is consistent in his actions, grounded in his decisions, and reliable in his commitments. Women notice this instinctively because it signals safety, security, and the potential for a relationship built on trust rather than chaos or drama. A man who is loyal does not waver when things become difficult. He does not disappear when challenges arise, nor does he chase when attention falters. His presence is steady, not dependent on circumstances or moods. This consistency creates an unspoken assurance that he can be relied upon, not only in moments of comfort, but also in moments of struggle. Women are naturally drawn to men who demonstrate this kind of stability because it represents a life free from emotional turbulence. Stability is not boring, it is magnetic because it reflects strength that is constant and unwavering. Loyalty is also an extension of emotional mastery. A man who controls his impulses does not allow fleeting desires, jealousy, or frustration to dictate his actions. He does not betray trust or break commitments out of momentary weakness. He understands that true attraction is built over time and that genuine connection cannot exist without integrity. Women sense when a man values trust over convenience, consistency over excitement, and commitment over drama. This sense of reliability becomes deeply attractive because it signals a man who is capable of love that endures beyond the initial thrill. Stability in a man also reflects inner strength. He does not need to prove himself through erratic behavior or attention-seeking gestures. He is grounded in his purpose, in his values, and in his vision for life. Women notice when a man is emotionally and mentally anchored because it creates a sense of safety. She can express herself freely, share her vulnerabilities, and explore the depth of the relationship without fear of instability. A man who is stable emotionally, mentally, and spiritually becomes a pillar, someone she can depend on, and someone whose presence she craves not because of drama, but because of the peace he brings. Furthermore, loyalty and stability create a rare sense of value. In a world where many men are inconsistent, emotionally reactive, or unreliable, the man who remains steady and faithful stands out naturally. He becomes rare, respected, and magnetic. Women are drawn not just to the strength he displays outwardly, but to the trustworthiness and reliability that underpin it. His loyalty is not conditional, his stability is not performative, and his presence is not fleeting. These qualities create lasting emotional impact, forming a foundation upon which deep admiration, respect, and love are built. A man who embodies long-term loyalty and stability is not only desirable, he is unforgettable. He represents the rare combination of strength and reliability, emotional control and integrity, presence and consistency. Women feel it instinctively, appreciate it deeply, and are drawn to it naturally. Loyalty and stability are more than virtues. They are magnets, the invisible forces that ensure he is remembered, valued, and cherished long after fleeting attractions fade. At the heart of attraction, it is not wealth, status, or charm that wins her heart. It is the man who masters himself. The man who controls his emotions, walks with silent strength, exudes confidence without arrogance, and embraces detachment, creates a presence that is magnetic and unforgettable. He uses his emotions as tools, not weapons, and through calmness and restraint, he stands out in a world of chaos. His value is amplified by contrast, and his loyalty and stability signal that he is not just a fleeting moment, but a foundation she can trust and depend on. Women are drawn to men who are unshakable, intentional, and self-possessed. They feel the difference between reaction and response, between neediness and self-sufficiency, between drama and composure. A man who embodies these qualities does not chase, does not beg, and does not overreact. He creates desire, respect, and admiration simply by being who he is, a man of purpose, strength, and integrity. When a man masters himself, he wins not just her attention, but her heart. Because true attraction is never about desperation. It is about presence, control, and the rare magnetic combination of strength, calm, and loyalty. He becomes unforgettable, not by force, but by being steady, intentional, and unwavering. And in that steadiness, that mastery, that quiet power, he becomes the man she cannot resist, the man she trusts, and the man she chooses. Not because he demands it, but because he earns it effortlessly.